الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من يريد الله بخيرات يتفقه في الدين. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us in a hadith that whoever Allah wants for him goodness, He gives him the fiqh or the knowledge of the deen. With this hadith, I want to begin today's session where we're going to go through the book Understanding Usul ul-Fiqh, and we're going to go through in the following days, inshallah, most of the sections of this book, so that we can get a grasp of the subject of Usul ul-Fiqh in a proper manner. Before we go into the sections of the book, just to give a brief introduction so that we have a general idea of why this subject is very important. We see today that many people in the ummah, whether it's the ulama, whether it's the general masses, when it comes to understanding Islam, they understand it in a very vague way, in a very general way. So they see things as morals in terms of this is good, we should do this, we shouldn't do this. We see many confusions regarding people's understanding of the ahkam. They don't understand what is fard, what is obligatory, what is recommended, what is mandub, okay, what is makruh, what is haram. People have general ideas rather than detailed concepts. So for example, we see so many contradictions in Bangalore. We see women wearing niqab but with their hair showing at the back. Why is that? That's because they don't understand the Sharia rules properly for their own lives. So we find that there is a problem in understanding Islam in detail. And even from the mimbar, when people talk about Islam, they talk about it in a very general sense and very general way. So as an example, the concept of sunnah. Let's follow Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The sunnah, let's follow the sunnah. Now people don't have the distinction clear in their mind, which part of the sunnah is obligatory to follow, which part is recommended, which part is haram even to follow. Okay? So this is the issue that today we see because of the intellectual decline. There is people's conception of Islam has become very obscure and very vague, and they don't see it in a detailed way. So today, inshallah, we want to go in and start the subject of Usul ul-Fiqh in order to clarify not only the issue of jurisprudence. So in Islam there are two parts. We're going to go into the definitions. There is fiqh, the jurisprudence in terms of the laws of Islam, and then the principles or the methodology to extract those laws. That is what is the meaning of Usul ul-Fiqh. I'm going to go into that in more detail. So for us it's very important to understand this subject, and to date in the English language there are very limited books or very limited works which discuss the subject of the principles of Islamic jurisprudence in a practical way. Most of the books that exist in the market, I've got some of them here just to give an example, like this book Islamic Jurisprudence by Imran Ahsan Khan Niazi, or another book Theories of Islamic Law. He's a professor of Islamic Studies in Pakistan. Most of the books, or there is a book called Islamic Jurisprudence by Sir Abdul Rahim, and there are various ones that exist, but most of them are written in a theoretical way. If you were trying to read that book, it is written in a very theoretical way, as if it is for some academic purpose. It is not written in a way for practical application. It is not written for every Muslim. It is not written for people who want to understand the deen and apply it. Rather, it's written for purposes of passing an exam or doing a research paper or a course, something like that. So, of course, these books are not good to follow. As well as that, many of them are affected by the decline in understanding usul, i.e. they have mixed certain Western concepts along with Islam. So they talk about usul al-fiqh not in the original way it should be discussed. So that's why we should be careful when we read these books that exist in the market. And that's one of the reasons that we wrote or published this book, which is trying to go into the science of usul al-fiqh in a way which the average person, the average Muslim, does not need to be an academic, he does not need to be someone trying to pass an exam, but he wants to understand the rules that he is following in his life. It's for him to be able to digest that this is the style that we've tried to write the book in, and in a practical way, not just in a theoretical style. So inshallah, what we're going to do for the next few days is that we will go through it section by section, and I will give an explanation, or maybe we can read part of a section and give an explanation, and then after that we can take questions on that section and then carry on. Just to appreciate that the style of the scholars in Islamic history was to study a subject in order to understand it, in order to apply it, not for theoretical knowledge. Okay? So the style of Western academia we see in the Muslim world and in the non-Muslim world, the academic style is that you study and you write notes and notes and notes and notes, and you're not even listening to the lecturer. You're not even listening, you're not even digesting. Then when it comes to exam time, you try to revise and pass the exam, and then after that you forget what you have learned. Yeah? And it's not a practical style. So this is not the style and the method of study in Islam. In Islam, the way to study a subject is that somebody explains the subject and you question it until you understand it, and then we carry on. So the old scholars, they used to have their halaqat where they would study a text, they would study a book, somebody would read a paragraph, they would explain it, and then they would question, the students would question until they understand it and then carry on. So that is the correct method of study in Islam. So therefore I would discourage the taking of notes and all of these issues, because then your mind becomes focused on writing, on missing what is said, rather than listening and trying to grasp and think about what is being said. And these sessions will be recorded as well, so they will be available afterwards, inshallah, so that for your own purposes, to revise what has been said and so on. And of course you can do your own reading, and I can take all of your emails afterwards. I can give more further reading on each of the subjects we study, so you can go into more depth into these areas in your own time, because we may touch, the aim of this book is not to go into the full depth of Usul ul-Fiqh such that you would become mujtahid, such that you become scholars. Of course that is a lengthy process. Rather it's to give the basics so that we can grasp the subject, for example, of dalil. What are the types of evidences in Islam? The sources of Sharia. What are the sources of Sharia? What are the types of sources? What are the definite sources? What are the indefinite sources? Where is the area we're allowed to differ? We're allowed to have ikhtilaf in Islam. Where are the areas where we can't have ikhtilaf? Okay? So we're going to go into such that you will have a good grasp, inshallah, of the basics of the subject. So let us start with the definition of fiqh. We will begin with the definition of fiqh, then we will go into usul al-fiqh. We start by saying, linguistically, fiqh means understanding, faham. As in the saying of Allah Azza wa Jal, مَا نَفْقَهُ كَثِيرًا مِمَّا تَقُولُ, that we do not comprehend, مَا نَفْقَهُ, much of what you say. So this is an ayah from the Quran which has used the linguistic meaning, okay, the linguistic usage of the term fiqh. Okay, so the term fiqh in the language is synonymous with the term fahm, understanding. Okay, so linguistically, when we say somebody has fiqh, or like the hadith that I quoted at the beginning, man yuridullah bi khairat yatafaqahu fi din. Whoever Allah wants to do good to him, He gives him that understanding of the deen. So this is the linguistic meaning. However, in Islam we know often that something may have a linguistic meaning, like salah. The linguistic meaning of salah is dua, supplication. However, that when we look at the evidences and when we study the subject, the scholars have defined salah and given it a specific meaning, what we call a shari'i meaning. So when we talk about salah now, when I say, I can't say, a Hindu is making very good salah. Even though he may be making supplication, because the meaning of salah has become specific, okay, to the issue of the revealed prayer to Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam for us to follow. Okay, so that is what we call reserved terms. There are certain terms which are reserved. Then there are other terms which are what we call terminological. They have been defined and they are normally used in certain contexts, like the term fiqh. So the term fiqh in the language is not haram to use it in the linguistic term, okay, because it has been used in hadith, it has been used in the Quran, in the linguistic meaning. But when we are talking in context, so when we are talking about usul al-fiqh, we are talking about the principles of jurisprudence. So now it has a, what we call a contextual meaning, a meaning which is something more specific than the general meaning, which is understanding. So what is the juristic meaning? Okay, what is the term in terms of jurisprudence? And here we are giving two meanings. The scholars of usul such as Ahmadi, Zarkashi, Baydawi, Shawkani, many scholars. In fact, this definition which we are giving is almost a unified definition. The scholars in words here or there, they have differed. Okay, just in the comprehensiveness of the definition, but in general, they have accepted the terminology and the definition that it is the knowledge of the practical Shari'i matters or the practical Shari'i rules that are derived from the Adilla Tafsiliyah, that are derived from the detailed evidences. Okay, so what do we get from this point? When we are talking about fiqh, we are talking about rules and we are talking about practical rules. So when we are talking about fiqh, we are not talking about Aqidah and Iman, as an example. Because Aqidah and Iman is about belief. Okay? In Islam, there are two major parts. There is Iman, okay, or belief, and then there is Ahkam Sharia rules. Okay? And they are two separate subjects, although they are interconnected, of course, because in the Iman we believe in Amantu Billahi, we believe in Allah, wa malaikatihi, in the angels, in the books, in the prophets, in Day of Judgment, in Qadr. This is the Islamic belief. Part of that belief is believing in Quran. And believing in Quran, that leads to the belief in all the rules that come from the Quran, etc. Right? So there is an interconnection between the belief and the Sharia. However, when we are talking about fiqh, we are talking in the juristic meaning, it is about jurisprudence, rules to do with practical matters. So i.e. to do with the actions of life. And that means in whatever area, whether it's to do like with some scholars define, they subdivided our relationships in our lives. So for example, Imam al-Qurtubi rahimullah, the famous mufassir of the Quran, he said mankind has three relationships. The first relationship is your direct relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? This consists of the ibadat, the worships, okay? Because your direct relationship, the way when you pray salah, when you fast in Ramadan, when you make zakah, when you make dawah, jihad, these are all part of ibadat. They are part of the ritual worships, man's direct relationship with Allah. As well as that are the aqaid, the beliefs, okay, which we have separated because the beliefs are not part of fiqh, they are not part of practical rules. But ibadat are. So the ibadat are part of fiqh. So the ahkam of salah, the ahkam of hajj, the ahkam of zakah, the ahkam of dawah, these are all part of fiqh. As well as ibadat, then the second relationship that man has is man's relationship with himself. Okay, so your relationship or human being, in Arabic of course man, it's generic, it means mankind, meaning human beings, man or woman. So human beings' relationship with themselves, this consists of what? This consists of malbusa, this consists of foodstuffs, clothing, and akhlaq, morals. Okay? So your relationship, what type of clothes you wear, what type of morality you have, what type of food you eat, this is your relationship with yourself. Then the third relationship is what the scholars have defined, is man's relationship with others. Okay, i.e. with other human beings. And in this area, and this is the greatest area in fiqh. Okay, the greatest area in fiqh are the mu'amalat wa uqubat, and the punishments. The transactions and the punishments. For example, your relationship with your wife, the contract of nikah, your relationship with your parents, the relationship, in society in terms of trade and the ahkam and the rules of trade. The rules of appointing a khalifa, the rules of judiciary, how to judge a legal matter, the rules of, war. All of these, okay, they are man's relationship with other people, and Islam has come to govern all of those relationships. Islam has come to take care of all of the affairs of life. So all of these matters come under the subject of fiqh, come under the subject of jurisprudence. And this is the second point here. We say all the Islamic laws, this definition is synonymous with the Sharia. So when we say Sharia, it's synonymous in the juristic meaning of fiqh. So when we say something is within Islamic fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, it's the same meaning as when we say something is in the Islamic Sharia. Okay? So this is the general meaning. Now, what is the hukm? What is the rule for studying fiqh? or for learning our rules relating to our own lives. Okay? So the next section deals with this. It says, knowing the Sharia rules which a Muslim is obliged with in life is an individual duty upon every Muslim, as he is commanded to undertake all his actions according to the laws revealed by his Creator. So here what we are saying is that the practical Sharia rules for our life, it's an obligation. We're on page 5, yeah? The basic terms in Islamic jurisprudence. So we have gone through, we have left the introduction. So, knowing the Sharia rules for our own lives, it is something which is fard ain. It is something which is an obligation upon every single Muslim. And this is unfortunately today, because of the decline, people have tried to make the knowledge of the rules for your own life something with the ulama only and not for the Muslim. Okay? And that is not correct. All the evidence points to the fact that it is obligatory at the minimum for the Muslims to know the belief. Number one, belief is fard, of course, for every Muslim to know his belief and to be convinced of that. Secondly, to know his obligations and the prohibitions at the minimum to do with his or her life. I.e., for example, I'll give you an example. If he is a doctor, it is obligatory for him to know the ahkam, the rules and the fiqh to do with medicine. Otherwise, how can he practice? For example, Rasulullah said the dead feel the pain like the living, and he forbade the Sahaba from cutting the dead bodies. Most of the Muslim doctors today, they do that. Autopsy, okay, which is haram. But they don't know because they have not studied the rule, which is obligatory for them to know. Right? Secondly, the teacher. If there's somebody is a teacher, it's fard for them to know the ahkam of teaching. Is it allowed for them to teach evolution? No. In Islam, it is only allowed to teach non-Islamic ideas in the style of refutation, not in the style of convincing the students. So if you're a science teacher, you can talk about evolution, but you can say it is a theory, and it is something which, it's wrong, and to disprove that. Then it is okay. But so this is the point here, that it is fard ain, it is fard on every single Muslim to understand the rules relating to his or her life. So of course, if you're a man, you don't need to know the rules of a woman. It's not obligatory upon you. It's not fard ain, it is not a direct obligation upon you. However, you do need to know the responsibility of a man. So for example, for you, it's fard for you to seek your own rizq, for yourself and your family, etc. Okay? So, the first point here, that fiqh is something necessary, it is something obligatory for every single Muslim. And we have many evidences to prove that. The evidences, I will not go through all of them here. The simple matter, as we explain here, is that Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded us about our accountability and has talked about something. Normally when we look at the books of Usul, they normally have a subject called taklif. Taklif means legal responsibility. When do human beings become legally responsible for practicing the Sharia and following the Sharia? And generally it is accepted they become legally responsible after they become physically mature, and if they are aqil, i.e. they have a sane mind. If they are insane or they have a problem in the mind, then the legal responsibility, like Rasulullah has mentioned, the pen is lifted from them. Okay, if they are children, the Prophet said the pen is lifted from 3. The child until he grows up, the insane until he becomes sane, okay, and the sleeping one until he wakes up. So sane meaning of sound mind. The one who is insane, majnoon, he has no sound mind, so he cannot think and he is not responsible for anything. Allah will not account him because he doesn't have a mind. The child may, take anything, like the wife of Musa alayhi salam, the wife of Fir'aun said about Musa alayhi salam, he is a child. He could, if you put fire, maybe he would put it in his mouth. A child can do anything, can he? So, the child until he grows up, when the child grows up, then the age of physical maturity is when there is legal, what we call taklif now. They are now responsible for all their actions, and therefore they must know the fiqh, they must know the Sharia rules related to their own lives. Okay? And that's what I mentioned, just to put it there. It's a relative issue depending upon who you are and what you are. I.e., if somebody is a trader, Umar radiallahu anh, he once found a man trading in a market. He asked him, what are the rules of trade? He said, I don't know. He ordered for him to be lashed. How can you trade without knowing the rules of trade? It's an obligation upon you. Allah Azza wa Jal has addressed the human beings in so many ayat. For example, in Surah Al-Ahzab, the ayah, it is not for any believer, male or female, to have any option in any matter upon which Allah and His Messenger have judged. Okay? And we know the ayah about فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ, that every mithqal, every atom's weight of good, you will see it, and every atom's weight of bad, you will see it. Now how? Of course, you will see it because you are responsible for that, meaning the good and the evil, every Muslim is responsible. So, we have so many ayat to prove that. And we also have a direct hadith where Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us, "Talabul ilm faridatan ala kulli muslim wa muslima." Seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every man and woman, Muslim, male and female. What type of knowledge is intended in the hadith? The type of knowledge is that type of knowledge which is obligatory for you as an individual, i.e. the ahkam sharia for your own life and the belief. Now, other things such as, science of hadith, such as knowing the evidences behind each rule, such as tafsir, such as Usul ul-Fiqh, the principles of jurisprudence, these subjects, they are fard but of a different type. They are fardul kifaya. They are a fard of sufficiency. Meaning, that knowledge must exist in the ummah, because without that we are not able to interpret the deen. We are not able to extract rules from Islam. We are not able to solve new problems. So ijtihad, usul ul-fiqh, all of these subjects, they come under fardul kifaya, the fard of sufficiency. If some people do it, that fard is lifted over the rest of the ummah. That meaning you are not sinful. So as a Muslim, if you don't know usul al-fiqh, you are not sinful. But for you to know it, you are fulfilling a fard which is fardul kifaya, therefore there is great reward in that. It is still fard, but it is fard kifaya. Okay? So you are achieving the reward. And there are many ahadith, and after that I will pause for questions. There are many ahadith which encourage, or which they are encouraging the issue of fiqh, the issue of understanding the deen. So the hadith I mentioned. Now also, in another hadith, this hadith actually, the meaning intended in the hadith is more specific. It's giving the meaning of the knowledge of the rules, okay, and the knowledge of the deen. So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in another hadith, as we quote here, you are in a time of many fuqaha, many people who understand the rules of Islam. Few speakers, many who give and few who ask. So action in this time is better than knowledge. There will soon come a time of a few fuqaha, few jurisprudence. Few jurisprudence. Many speakers, many who beg and few who give. So knowledge in this time is better than action. So briefly, just to give the meaning of the hadith, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was talking about the time of the companions. He's talking about the time of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, that today there are many fuqaha, there are many people who understand the Sharia, there are many people who understand the rules of Islam, and knowledge is widespread. Okay? There are few speakers, people who used to speak, they were very careful in speaking. They would not, somebody would go to one of the companions, they would say, go and ask Omar, go and ask Ali. They were very careful in just giving fatwa. They were careful in giving anything in case they make a mistake. Okay? So there were few speakers. Many who give, i.e. the meaning here is in sadaqah, and few who ask. So action in this time is better than knowledge. There will soon come a time of few fuqaha, and this is the time today. Few people of knowledge. Many who speak, many who beg, and few who give. So knowledge in this time is better than action. So the hadith actually is emphasizing to us in the time when knowledge is already widespread, then action is better because people already have the ilm. People already know about Islam, so they should just act. In a time where knowledge is rare, and the knowledge of the deen is rare, instead of just acting and doing anything, it's better to know action. It doesn't mean you don't, the hadith is not saying that action is not important, or that knowledge is not important. It's saying the priority of what in which time. So the priority today is knowledge before action. You need to undertake an action, but based upon the correct knowledge. Otherwise, you could end up doing something haram. You can end up doing something against the deen. You could end up like the common example today, because people don't understand fiqh and they don't understand usul ul-Fiqh. They follow people blindly, and those people may lead them astray, and they just say, well, we are following, we don't know anything. So they may go into bid'ah, they may go into committing haram, they may go into, like today, muftis legalizing riba, things which are definitively prohibited. They start to legalizing, appointing people to rule by non-Islam. So many things are happening. So the issue is the priority of knowledge. Also Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, the death of 1,000 worshippers who pray at night and worship in the day is less serious than the death of one intelligent knower, basir, of the halal and the haram of Allah. So this is the importance of the one who has knowledge of the deen. Okay, whether that is in fiqh or usul al-fiqh. That one, think about it, 1,000 normal people's death is less serious than the death of somebody who has ilm of the deen, because the one who has ilm is the one who is going to spread that and is responsible to spread that. Like Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Al-ulama warathatul anbiya. The ulama are the inheritors of the prophets. Okay, why? Because they are the ones who spread the deen. They are the ones who carry the deen forward. Or they are supposed to do that at least. So, I will pause here. We have just covered the definition of fiqh and the importance of fiqh, and some of the texts regarding that, and the issue of taklif. If there are any questions about that, let us take it, and then after that you can ask your question. Head, just raise your hands. Whoever's got a question, feel free.
Any questions?
No problem. If what happens normally is, as you think about the subject, or if there is something which I said is not clear, then it's better to ask about that until you have other more detailed questions. So if you have understood what is being said, then khair, that's fine.
The definition of
yes.
Definition plus the different types of
yes.
One is aqidah and ibadah.
Yes. Mu'amalat. You want me to repeat that?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, the first issue is that there are two broad categories in Islam. One is aqidah, or the aqaid, the plural of aqidah. That includes anything to do with the belief, whether it is the definitive or the other matters related to the belief which we trust in. So that is the aqaid. So immediately we can look, when we look at a subject, is it related to aqidah or is it related to sharia? So for example, the issue of rizq from Allah Azza wa Jalla, it is not related to sharia, it is related to aqidah. So if somebody looks, I'm just showing you what happens if somebody looks at the wrong place for the wrong thing, he will get to the wrong conclusion. So if you wanted to trade and you look at the ayat to do with rizq, you will end up saying, oh, there's no point in trading, Allah gives the rizq, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, and spend out of the rizq you have been provided. So therefore, you will not do anything. But aqidah is to do with belief, meaning that you believe Allah is the one who provides the rizq for you. But when you want to do something, you look at the sharia, you look at fiqh. What is my obligation as a Muslim man? Do I need to work? Yes, it is fard for me. Therefore, even if you work very hard, even if you follow all the sharia rules, you still believe whatever you earn is from Allah. You may work all your life, you may get nothing. You may not do much work, you may become a millionaire. Because rizq is in the hands of Allah. Right? So this is the issue. There is aqidah, there is sharia. Then we subdivide the sharia. We subdivide fiqh. And the ulama have subdivided and accepted that subdivision. That is in ibadat, which are ritual worships. Okay. Then there is the akhlaq, which are morals. For example, being morals or general qualities that we should have, being humble, okay, having Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, the one who has no rahmah, the one who has no mercy, Allah will have no mercy with him. So that is to have mercy, to be merciful. This is a moral. Morals. Then there is mu'amalat, transactions, okay, malbusat, foodstuffs, clothing, okay, and ukubat, punishment. So these are the categories within fiqh, within the Sharia. Now, you can again lump them into three. One is man's relationship with Allah directly, which is the beliefs and the worships. Man's relationship with himself, which is clothing, foodstuffs and akhlaq. And man's relationship with others, which is the transactions and the punishments. Okay? So this is just a categorization. It's just the way the scholars just subdivided the Sharia to make things easier. Okay? So that we can look at things in an easier way.
First, regarding ayah, you do not comprehend much of what you say.
Yes.
You do not understand.
Yes.
I'm not able to get the meaning.
The meaning of the ayah, we are not using the ayah here to tell anything about fiqh in terms of jurisprudence. We are using it just to give the linguistic meaning of fiqh. This ayah is not to do with the subject. We're just saying Allah Azza wa Jal himself has used the term nafqahu, has used the term to mean understanding, the linguistic meaning. So we're giving that from the language, in the Arabic language, fiqh, in the language means understanding. Okay, so the context of the verse is not to do with this point. Is to do with something else, right? But it's the style of the scholars that normally, when they talk about a terminology, they normally look to the terminology, how it is used in the Quran, linguistically, okay? And then they go into defining it in other ways, right? Yes.
Another question.
Yes.
Belief, knowledge, and action.
Yes.
How do you link these three things? Belief, knowledge, action.
Okay.
Is there kind of a strong pattern or?
Yes, of course, the point is that the belief is related to those matters that make somebody a Muslim. Okay? So Iman is something which, when somebody has it, we classify him as a believer. If he dies, we make janazah for him or her. Right? They are a Muslim. So somebody believes in Allah and the fundamentals of Aqidah, Iman, the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the last prophet and the fundamentals, then we classify him as a Muslim. Now, the belief alone, if somebody just believed in Islam and did not perform any of the actions required from him by the Sharia, but he believed that he should, but he didn't, he would still be a Muslim, technically, but he would be what we call a fasid, a sinner, somebody who's disobeying Allah, somebody who is not following the commands and the prohibitions of Allah. So the belief should lead you, because once you believe that Allah Azza wa Jal exists, He is the creator of the universe, He has ordered for you to live your life according to His commands and His prohibitions. Okay, and therefore automatically man starts looking for what to do. How can I worship Him? How should I act? How should I satisfy my hunger? How should I satisfy my other desires? Then it leads to knowledge. So knowledge is the bridge between belief and action. So we can say fiqh or sharia is the bridge between iman and a'mal. Because from the belief, then it leads for you to seek. How shall I, worship Allah? Then you would seek to look, what is the sharia? What is the fiqh to do with salah? To do with foodstuffs? What is the halal? What is the haram? To do with marriage? To do with trade? To do with politics? To do with everything. Right? So it is the bridge. So if somebody does the actions of Islam without the belief, the actions mean nothing. So a non-Muslim, Mother Teresa, may have been very nice, may have given sadaqah to the poor, may have done everything in a good way, let's assume. But if they don't believe in Islam and they have known about Islam, then they die, we don't make janazah for them, do we? They are disbelievers and they will end up in Jahannam. Abu Talib, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, until the last moment was trying to tell, even though he supported the Prophet, he died as a non-Muslim and it is a clear hadith of Rasulullah which says that the least punishment in Jahannam will be of Abu Talib. He will have a coal upon his knee. There's two narrations. One says he will be wearing shoes of fire and his brain will be boiling. This is Abu Talib who supported the Prophet. So action without belief means nothing. Belief without action means something, meaning if you die as a believer, but you are fasiq, you are a sinner and you are a transgressor, you've disobeyed Allah and then you're going to serve a sentence in Jahannam if you have done that. Okay? But in the end, if you are true, but if you actually believed in Islam, in the end, then after serving your sentence, you will eventually end up and be removed, that is mentioned in the hadith, and put in Jannah. Yeah? So that is the distinction. Yes.
In this world, in our life, if any action done without following the ahkam of Islam,
Yes.
how it's going to be evaluated by Allah? Because we are in a situation wherein not everyone is exposed to the ahkam of Islam.
Yes.
So we are very far. There's a big bridge between them and the different circumstances.
Yes.
So will we be accountable for it?
Yes. The simple matter is this, that every action we perform, it has been obliged for us. You know, Allah Azza wa Jal said it is not fitting for any believer, male or female, to have any option. When Allah has decided something, we don't have any option. Okay? Rasulullah ﷺ said in an authentic hadith, كُلُّ عَمَلٍ لَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ أَمْرُنَا فَهُوَ رَدٌّ. Any action not done in accordance with what I have brought, it is rad, it is rejected. So now if we do actions, and we don't know what the Sharia is, we don't know what the rule is, it is rejected. And there is another hadith where Rasulullah ﷺ said, any action done, even if it is right, even if you end up, and what you are doing is not haram, as an example, but without having the knowledge, okay, you will attain sin for that. So, meaning you can't have guesswork. There is no place for guesswork in fiqh. There is no place for guesswork in following the Sharia. So, you need to know the rule before acting. There is a qaida in Usul ul-Fiqh, a principle. Every action requires a hukum, and every hukum requires a dalil. Okay? So, we can't just continue to... I will give you an example. If my wife is out and I am alone at home, and a cleaner comes to clean the house who is a woman, if I don't think about that, I don't bother about that, and I just carry on sitting here and I am alone with her, I have not bothered to know what is the Sharia rule. Is it allowed for me to be alone with a woman who is not mahram to me or is not my wife? If I don't bother, then I am sinful for that, because I am just acting without the knowledge. Rasulullah ﷺ has told us, if two of you are alone, the third is shaitan. So what is known as khalwa, to be alone with a woman who is not mahram, is haram. You see the issue here. So it's very dangerous, you are right, that Muslims, especially in areas not related to ibadat, especially to other areas of life, because these areas of life, because of the influence of secularism, the division of religion from life's affairs, religion is seen as ibadat, as seen as morals only. When it comes to the rules of trade, how many of us know the ahkam of companies? What are the type of companies in Islam? What are the type of contracts in Islam? But we are trading every day. Is it allowed to... The other day I went to this juice hut outside, the cane juice, and there is a very young boy there selling something. So I was thinking, is it? But then I saw somebody elder behind him. So I said, okay, maybe it's okay to trade with him, because people don't think, is it allowed to trade somebody with somebody who is not baligh? Because the other person is not mukallaf, he is not legally responsible by Sharia. And therefore, how can you have any contract with him? Okay? You cannot, unless he is acting on behalf of somebody who you can have a contract with. So if his father is there, if somebody elder is there, then he is just acting as a representative of the one who you are doing the contract with. People don't think about those things, right? Because, as you rightly said, that knowledge has decreased today and people have divided Islam from life.
But whatever you said till now,
Yes.
the sentence which you said is contradicting with your earlier sentence.
Okay.
In the beginning you said if we perform some action without the knowledge, then for that particular action we are not accountable for in the front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
No, I didn't say that. I said, no, maybe you misheard, or maybe my words was not clear. I said that every action we do, we are accountable in front of Allah Azza wa Jal for that. And I give it the qaida, every action requires hukum, every hukum requires dalil. What I was talking about is that I said there is a division between fard ain knowledge and fard kifaya knowledge. Okay? Maybe you're referring to that. Fard ain knowledge is the knowledge that you are obligatory. I went through the hadith which is in the book. Talabul ilm faridatan ala kulli muslim. And seeking knowledge is an obligation. It's a fard related to every Muslim. Related to what? It's not obligatory for you to be a mujtahid. It's not obligatory for you to know all the categories of hadith. It's not obligatory for you to know the styles of tafsir. But it is obligatory for you to know your responsibility towards your parents, as an example. Okay, so there is the distinction in the type of knowledge. It is, and human beings, in Islam, ignorance is not an excuse. Ignorance is not an excuse in front of Allah. That is why the scholars, they said somebody who embraces Islam within 40 days, okay, normally they have taken it from some extraction, that within 40 days they should be taught the Sharia rules to do with their whole life. At least the rules, maybe not the evidence. The evidence comes later, it is better to know the evidence. But at least the rules. So that normally somebody becomes a new Muslim, we sit with them, normally we live with them for 40 days, teaching them, this is the salah, this is the basics of salah, this is haram, this is halal, this is your relationship with your wife, your children. We must teach them, these are the rules of contracts, these are the rules of ikhtilat, mixing between men and women. It is obligatory. After 40 days, that's it. Now he starts to be, because within that gap, there is a liability, there is a excuse for him. He is just a new Muslim, he doesn't know anything. So if he drinks khamar and he does not know, he does not know. It's not something he is accountable, he did not know. But after the period of sufficient time has been given to him, he cannot say ignorance is an excuse in front of Allah. It will not be an excuse. So on Yawm al-Qiyamah he will say, oh I drank, oh I didn't know, I thought it's halal. It's rejected. Allah has given you an aql, has given you the mind. And the mind is the center of taklif, is the center of legal responsibility. If you look at all that hadith, it's essentially leading to the point that the mind is the center of accountability. Because if your mind is befogged, i.e. you are insane, then you're not accountable. If you're a child, the mind is not developed. And if you're asleep, the mind is unconscious. So the mind is the center of accountability. If the mind is the center, Allah has given you the mind to use it. Use it. We know about our courses and our work in detail, but not about our lives in accordance with Islam. So therefore we are sinful in front of Allah. We have no excuse. Fed? Shall we carry on? I think we will carry on, inshallah. Khair. We will continue now about Usul ul-Fiqh. Usul ul-Fiqh is, here we define it, is the collection of the principles pertaining to the methodology for the extraction of fiqh. One of the scholars, Ibn al-Hajib, he give a definition here, that the principles by which the mujtahid derives the legal rules of conduct from the specific evidences. Okay? Now, of course, this is just a definition. Just to make it clearer here, the concept of Usul ul-Fiqh is comparable to adhering to the methodology when conducting a scientific experiment. Similar to adhering to the methodology in deriving fiqh is referred to as Usul ul-Fiqh. So, the way we perform an experiment, there is a methodology. Normally you have a thesis, you have certain test data. There is a way of conducting an experiment, or there is a way of conducting something. There is a methodology to achieve something. Okay? Or like you can say the methodology for an operation, for a doctor. There is certain things, sterilization, things must be sterilized. Then there is certain things that he does. There is a process by which he conducts the operation, right? Similarly here, Usul al-Fiqh, the principles, usul comes from the word asal. Asal means principle or foundation. So, usul is the plural, usul are the principles or the foundations of fiqh, which is jurisprudence. So, these foundations are basically giving us the methodology, okay, or talking about the methodology of extracting the rules, extracting the hukam from the detailed evidences, okay. And that is normally used by a mujtahid. It is normally used, in actual extraction, who is the one who actually uses usul ul-fiqh to get to the end product, to derive the fiqh. It is the one who is known as the mujtahid, the one who is known as the person who makes ijtihad, extracting the law from the evidence. Okay, that is the term mujtahid, which we'll go into more detail later on. So, that is the person who will utilize the principles actively in order to extract the hukum. However, the knowledge of usul al-fiqh should not only be limited to him. Should not only be limited to the mujtahid. Because he is the one that, yes, extracts the hukum. But for the general Muslim, okay, as we said, it is important, especially in a time where knowledge is not widespread. Especially in the time when we don't know whether the person who is talking about Islam is talking from daleel, whether he is talking from fiqh, whether even he is inventing from the mind. We don't know. Even if he is an alim and he looks like he has knowledge, maybe he is going against the basics of the deen. Maybe he is, waging war on Islam instead of aiding Islam. But he has the imamah and he is sitting in al-Azhar. Okay? So today it is more important actually to understand the principles of jurisprudence, to be able to distinguish what is an opinion that is legitimate, that actually is coming from Islam, and what is an opinion that is batil, that is rejected, and that is even maybe a munkar, maybe an evil. Okay? That is very important. And in the age today, we have an age of what we call a age of free thinking. Okay? People, like Rasulullah told us, people, they are speaking a lot, okay, without fiqh, without knowledge. So everyone wants to talk about Islam. People will quote one hadith and make his own interpretation. People will look at Quran. In the Quran it says, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الصَّلَاةِ, do not approach salah. Then it continues, when you are in a state of drunkenness, maybe people will quote the beginning. Oh, there is no need for salah. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا. They're quoting Dalil. They're quoting Quran. But they are, what are they doing? Misinterpreting. They are playing with the Quran. And Rasulullah said in an authentic hadith, the thing I fear the most for this ummah is the munafiq scholar who argues with the Quran with the eloquent tongue. Meaning he is a scholar, but he is a munafiq. He is not a believer in Islam, and he is trying to play games with the people, leading them astray. Okay, Rasulullah also told us, knowledge will decrease by the death of the people of knowledge. And then people will give fatwa, it's in Bukhari, people will give fatwa from the mind, and they will sell the deen for worldly goods. Okay, they will start giving fatwa from the mind. And this is what happening, and not from the daleel, not from the evidence, not from the kitab, not from the sunnah. Also Rasulullah, he warned us, whoever takes the ra'i from the mind, he is in hellfire. You can't just invent your hukam from the mind. You can't invent good and bad from the mind. That is why, in the majority of the books of Usul ul-Fiqh, the actual classical works which go in deep into the subject, they put the subject at the beginning called Al-Hakim, the sovereign. They have a discussion, who is the sovereign? Can the mind decide good or bad? Or like one of the most famous books of Usul ul-Fiqh, it is called Al-Ihkam fi Usul al-Ahkam by Al-Amidi, the great Shafi'i scholar. He puts the discussion, can the mind decide good and bad by itself? No. Only the Sharia of Allah can decide for us what is good and evil. That is the basis. So therefore we must look to the Sharia to determine what is good and what is evil. Okay, that is the foundation. So this is one of the biggest reasons for ourselves, especially if you're involved in da'wah also. When we're involved in da'wah, people are calling towards many paths. Some people are saying the most priority today is just to make tazkiyatun nafs, just to perfect yourself, and you don't need to condemn what is happening evil in the world. Just be a good Muslim in your heart. They're quoting some daleel, but now that daleel, does it lead to the conclusion which they are leading to? Or does it contradict other evidence? Is it a valid view or not? You see the issue. So we need, even somebody who is not a scholar needs to understand, and it is very useful to understand Usul ul-Fiqh, to be able to distinguish. Because today we are in a world of fitna. Amina Wadud, the professor of Islamic studies in America, she is saying the woman can lead the salah in front of the men and the congregation can be mixed, and she is leading that. And the Muslims, they think, oh, she is a scholar, she is a professor of Islamic studies. You will not believe, there is a group of so-called Muslims in America called Al-Fatiha. They are a group of Muslim homosexuals. We cannot believe that here. They are saying, yeah, Islam does not forbid. The story of Qawm al-Lut is talking about the previous prophets. Today it's no problem. And they're claiming following Islam. These are extreme examples, Yani, just to show you. They are extreme examples, but there are less extreme examples which have become commonplace. They have become common. You will hear people saying Islam has no concept of ruling. Islam has no concept of khilaf, and that's contradicting qat'i issues in Islam, even though they may be professors of Islamic studies. So, the understanding, the methodology allows us to understand whether the actual extracted rule is something in line with Islam or not. So I'll give you an example. If somebody reads a book of biology and just goes and does an operation anyhow, we can easily sense that the methodology he has used is not fitting for the issue. It's false. It will lead to disaster. The person will probably die. Okay, isn't it? You can easily see it. So if we know the methodology of extracting the hukum from the Sharia, somebody who is just doing a disaster in that can be easily detected. We can detect who is false, who has something valid. Right? So this is something very important today. Now, some areas where Usul ul-Fiqh, which Usul ul-Fiqh covers, and which we are going into here, the first issue is the legislative sources, okay? What are what we call the adilla, what are the evidences, or what can be the sources of law? When we look to a dalil and evidence, where do we look? So that is a discussion we're going to cover later on. And these sources, some of them have been unanimously agreed upon, like the Quran, the Sunnah, the ijma' of the Sahaba, the ijma' of the companions, and qiyas, and analogy. These are what we call the definitive sources which people have not really disputed upon, and the scholars generally have agreed on. Okay? There is slight difference when we talk about qiyas. Some don't like the terminology, but as a concept, it is accepted. We will talk about that later on. Then there are certain sources of law which are, some scholars have a view that we can use other things as an additional evidence. Okay, we're going to discuss it later on. Additional evidence means what? If we do not find the answer in the Quran, we look to the Sunnah. If we don't find it in the Sunnah, we look to the ijma' of the Sahaba. We don't find it there, we use analogy. If we don't find it there, then some scholars, they say, we can take some things like ra'i of Sahaba, the individual opinion of a Sahaba, as a daleel. Or other scholars say we can take what is masalih al-mursala, what is in the common interest of the Muslim community, as long as it does not contradict Quran and Sunnah, then we can use that as an evidence. Some say we can take the ijma' of the ummah, whatever the ummah is consensus upon. Okay? Others say we can use what we call ijma' of the people of Medina, because they were closest to the Prophet. So whatever they made consensus upon should be something which is a dalil. So these are what we call the dhanni, or the speculative sources of law. The ones which are ikhtilafi, they are debated. Okay, they are not unified upon. We will discuss them later on. The second issue, which is very important in usul, is what we call the issue of Arabic language. Okay, that we know Allah Azza wa Jal has revealed the Quran in Arabic. Okay? And therefore, the Arabic language is the basis of the Quran and the Sunnah. So every ayah and every hadith, which are the fundamental sources of law, as everyone knows here, in Islam, they are revealed in a specific language. And therefore, in order to comprehend them properly, we cannot just read Bukhari in English and make an interpretation. We need to know what is the Arabic of the terminology used. What is the language? Otherwise, we cannot make blunders. And that's what people are doing today. They are reading one hadith and thinking they are mujtahid. They are just interpreting that. Even though the language of the hadith, they are making taqleed in that. They are following the translator, one translator. Okay? The language in Quran and in hadith is very important, because that is how Allah Azza wa Jalla and Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is communicating to us. And therefore, understanding the Arabic language to extract rules and laws is essential for the mujtahid. Okay? So somebody who claims that he can extract rules, he must know the Arabic language. It's a fundamental condition. If he does not know it, then it's impossible for him to extract the rule, or whatever he will do is going to be a blunder. Okay? We can take a simple example, that when we look at certain hadith, okay, we have to look at the language itself indicates the rule, okay, and indicates what the hadith is talking about. So, for example, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he forbade the playing with a certain game of stones. Now, this is an example I use because it shows the blunder of somebody just reading a translation. The translator has translated that hadith to say that playing chess is haram. Because playing chess is playing with stones. Okay, it's like a board game. So people today say playing chess is haram, and they start condemning everyone who plays chess. But the hadith in the Arabic, the chess was not played at the time of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. There was a certain game which was to do with gambling, and the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam forbade that. So people take that and say, oh, playing chess is haram. You see the issue. So we have to be very careful that the rule must be understood in the Arabic, or the text must be understood in the Arabic language, and that's something important. And that includes the rules of grammar, the rules of syntax, and other things related to Arabic. Also, we explain here that interpreting the text of the Quran and Sunnah, no ruling can be deduced from it unless it is understood correctly. Just open the door here. The linguistic structure of the text of the Quran and Sunnah varies from one style to another. Some examples of these linguistic styles are dhanni, the speculative text; qat'i, the definitive text; am, the general; khas, the specific; haqiqi, the literal; and majazi, the metaphorical. These are just some brief examples of the styles of language. Okay? If we do not appreciate those styles of language, then we cannot understand the evidence properly. So for example, Allah Azza wa Jalla and Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, in fact, it's hadith and in the Quran, says the hand of Allah is over their hands. Okay? In one hadith is about contracts, the one who makes the correct contract. The hand of Allah is over their hands. Now, here it is metaphoric. What is the meaning? It is majazi. It doesn't mean here literal, haqiqi, that when we make a contract, the hand of Allah is over. It doesn't mean that. It means Allah accepts that. It is a metaphoric meaning. Right? What we call majazi, a metaphor. Right? So when we understand the text, it is important to be able to distinguish what is the majazi, what is the metaphoric, what is the haqiqi, what is the literal. Right? Otherwise, we will not be able to do that. We will not be able to make interpretation. Certain things may be literal. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, asabiya, it is rotten and stinking, leave it. So nationalism, asabiya is nationalism, to say I am Indian and you are Pakistani, I am this, I am better than you. It is rotten, leave it. So this is literal. Okay, he said the one who calls for asabiya, falaysa min, is not one of us. This is literal. It is not metaphorical. Okay, so the language itself, okay, is very important when we come to Usul ul-Fiqh. We will go into later on when we talk about ikhtilaf, when we go in the debates about, most of the debates actually, majority of the debates when we look at fiqh, a lot of it's to do with linguistics. Okay? For example, just to give some brief example to show this issue. Do you need wudu to touch the Quran? Okay? Allah in the Quran, He says, none touch it save the mutahharun, the ones who were purified. Now on this meaning of the verse, the scholars dispute. Ibn Hazm, who is the scholar, one of the great scholars of the Zahiri school of thought, the literalist school of thought, he says this verse is talking about Lawh al-Mahfuz. Is talking about not the Quran, is talking about Lawh al-Mahfuz, which is the protected decree. We know Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said Allah created the pen and told the pen to write everything until the day of judgment, meaning the taqdeer, the ilm of Allah, the knowledge of Allah, which is in, we know it is a book, it is a record, which is in Jannah or is with Allah. So Ibn Hazm says this verse is the mutahharun means the angels, the malaika. Mutahharun means the pure ones, the purified, and the malaika are masum, they are pure, they cannot disobey Allah. So therefore this verse is talking about that. It's not talking about touching the Quran with wudu. So that is the view of the Zahiri school of thought. Other scholars, and the majority of the scholars, they say no. The meaning of mutahharun means tahara. And the meaning of the book here means the Quran. So this is a dispute on language, isn't it? It's a dispute on the language. Some are saying, and the majority of Ahlul Sunnah say, that touching the Quran with wudu is wajib, is obligatory because of this verse. That none can touch it save the mutahharun, save the purified. This is to do with language. So it shows us the importance of language and understanding the language and even differences that can occur. So we have to appreciate that, and we appreciate language for the mujtahid. It's not just the basic, he reads some school books of Arabic. It means he must understand, for example, in Arabic language, certain terms are mushtarak. They have more than one meaning. Okay? They have many meanings maybe. So for example, the term ayn in Arabic, it can mean eye, it can mean spy, it can mean gold, it can mean silver. It is one word. It can mean many things. They are mushtarak. The term ruh in Arabic, it can mean the secret of life. It can mean Jibreel alayhi salam. Allah, it can mean the Sharia. Okay, so it depends on the context of terms. Okay, so again here the language is very important, because without the language how can you make interpretation, right? Fine. So we go into, it continues explaining this point to say that as an example, page 10 it says, without being aware of the rules of Arabic grammar for interpreting the text of the Quran and Sunnah, one would not be able to differentiate whether the command in the ayah of hadith was something for a certain action is haram, forbidden, makruh, undesirable. Therefore Usul ul-Fiqh is a definite prerequisite for deriving rulings. Okay, so what do we mean by that? We mean that, for example, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a hadith, in the language may show disapproval towards something. But to determine whether his disapproval is to the level of haram, whether the disapproval is to the level of makruh, you need to understand the linguistics. In which way has the Prophet ﷺ said that? Okay? If he has said it in a way which is light in the language, okay, like don't do that. Or he is showing some light disapproval towards that, maybe it is makruh. If he is strong just in the language maybe, okay. So once Ali radiallahu anhu was making wudu and he said, save your heels from the hellfire. Here the Prophet is making obligatory, the heels must be washed. He was noticing when he was making wudu that maybe he is doing it very lightly. Okay? So here the language is important. Okay? That without that we cannot extract even the hukm, without the usul, or without the appreciation of the Arabic. The end product we mention here, since the rulings are derived based on Usul ul-Fiqh, a variation in the usul may result in variation in different rulings. This is one of the reasons that there might exist more than one ruling in some issues. we have to appreciate if somebody has difference in the principles of extracting the law, and there is ikhtilaf, some of the principles are definite, like the fact that the Quran is the first source of law, everyone accepts. The fact that the Sunnah is the second source of law, everyone accepts. So those are certain definitive principles, but there may be certain principles where there is ikhtilaf upon, there is difference of upon. So if there is difference on the principles, therefore the end product will be different sometimes, isn't it? So that's why we have schools of thought. That's one of the reasons. The difference in usul has led to the difference in the fiqh. That's why you have the Shafi'i, the Maliki, the Hanbali, the Zaydi, the Jafiri. You have the schools of thought in Islamic history which are different. The Zahiri, the literalist. This is because of the difference in interpretation and the rules of interpretation. The next point we make here is that the Sharia, what is the Sharia? The linguistic meaning of the Sharia, or the word Sharia, is a non-exhaustive source of water in which people satisfy their thirst. Thus, the linguistic significance of the Sharia is that the Islamic laws are effectively a source of guidance. So linguistically, Sharia means the source of water. Okay, so for us the meaning from that, it is the source of guidance in our lives. In terms of a juristic meaning, or a other meaning of Sharia, not the linguistic, it means all the laws of Islam. Okay? It means all the laws. So when we mean Sharia, we are talking all the laws. So the term Sharia is synonymous with the term fiqh in reality. Okay? It's the same, one and the same thing. Okay? Because when we talk about the fiqh of Salah or the ahkam Sharia for Salah, it's the same thing, the Sharia rules. Right? So we are just clarifying this point here. It is a synonym, meaning it means the same thing. Khair, I will pause here. Again, if there are any questions, then we can continue to talk about the types of Ahkam Sharia, which is something important. Yes?
You spoke about the chess game, right? So in order to have a better understanding about the fiqh, Rasulullah told the game of stones and the gambling at the background. Yeah? Gambling and game.
Yes.
So when it comes to chess, normally people started playing in houses for just entertainment, pastime. Okay. Later on, what happened is it went to a level that they just started playing for money. Again, it came to a concept of gambling.
No, the hadith, or the example I was giving is an example of a translator making a mistake in translation and somebody making interpretation based upon that and condemning others for it, right? So the translator, obviously he has assumed the meaning here. So in the language, the same word can be used for chess today. The same word can be used for chess. So now, he is just translating it as chess. But the issue is that, linguistically, the time of Rasulullah, chess was not even played in Mecca. What was played was a gambling game of stones. So what is meant in the hadith is that. Now the translator has translated chess. Somebody is reading that and forbidding everyone who is playing chess, even though we're not playing with money. When you're playing chess, it's nothing to do with money. Today it's not gambling, it's not for money, you're just playing it for fun. Right? So it doesn't mean it's forbidden. So this is an example of mistakes of ones who try to make interpretation without being qualified in that, without having the knowledge of Usul ul-Fiqh. Okay? They are making something halal or haram without even having the requisite knowledge. Therefore, if you don't have the knowledge, what did Allah say in the Quran? Ask Ahlul Dhikr, ask the people of knowledge. Rasul ﷺ said when a man, one of the Sahaba, he was very badly injured in jihad, he had a fractured skull, and he asked the other companions, because he was in a state of janaba, in a state without ghusl, okay? He asked the other companions, do you find an excuse for me to make tayammum, or do I have to make, or do I have to make ghusl? Okay, the other companions, they made a blunder here. They said, no, you have to make ghusl. So he made ghusl now. Because of making ghusl, his wounds were so bad that by putting water on that, it accelerated the wound and he died. Okay? Rasul ﷺ, when he heard of that, he became very angry. He was very angry. He said, they have killed him. They have killed him. They should have asked. The cure for the lack of knowledge is to ask. So what is the meaning here? Don't just try to say this is right or wrong and make your own mind. If you don't know something, then you ask the rule. Okay? So if you don't have ilm, don't make it ta'wil, don't make an interpretation of Quran, or don't make ijtihad, don't make fatwa. You ask the one who is a mujtahid, or you look and consult the books of fiqh which are written by mujtahideen, and then you can answer the issue.
But this applies to every action.
Yes, every action.
We may think that an action is good according to our mind, our
Yes.
judgment.
Yes.
But it's not good. It's not according to the...
The action question comes from the starting of the topic and we spoke with, action, knowledge and...
Yeah, like I will give you an example. Everyone here, commonly, they say namaste to the Hindus without thinking. So Hindus say namaste, they just reply. But namaste, it means I bow to you, which is haram. You see the issue. People are doing as a reflex. They just think it's a normal thing. But they don't understand what does it mean. You're saying that, and it's part of their religion. It's a greeting to do with their religion. And Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he forbade us to imitate. He said, whoever imitates people is one of them. So it is haram to imitate a religion in their rituals and anything to do with their rituals. So now if this is part of their religion, we cannot. If they say namaste, you should say how are you. You should not answer with the religion. Anything religious.
They even change it now.
Yes.
Now they say Hariyo.
Hari, yeah. That's even worse, maybe. Right? So, yes. Well, this is a discussion which precedes going into talking about law. It's a discussion, as I said, normally the ulama put it as a first topic. Who is the sovereign? Who is al-hakim? That we need to realize that can anything good or evil be determined by the mind? Okay? If we leave it to the mind, okay, it can lead to anywhere. Just because in some people give the argument, like in history, the majority of people see stealing as bad and murder as bad. Okay? So what? So what? Allah said in the Quran, وَلَكِنْ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ, and the majority of mankind know nothing. Does it mean majority is the standard to determine right or wrong? We can argue. I was once arguing with a professor. He said to me this argument, good and bad, he was a non-Muslim, can be determined by the mind. Look, in history, murder is always evil. I said, okay, I want to argue the minority are right. Now refute me. I am arguing from the mind. You are arguing from the mind. I'm saying the minority are free. They can do whatever they want. They can kill whoever they want. Why not? They are free. They're only going to live once. And you are arguing, no, it's bad. But now these are both arguments from the mind. So therefore the mind is not the source of Sharia. Okay, the mind cannot be. And this is, in Islam, this is something qata'i, definitive. It is something part of Iman actually. It is part of belief. Because we believe Allah is al-Hakim. That is one of the attributes of Allah. He is the sovereign, the one who determines rules and laws for us. We don't define for Him, He determines for us. Inil hukmu illa lillah. The sovereignty belongs to Allah. Allah told us in the Quran, they may be, He said, Kutiba alaykumul qital. Fighting is prescribed for you, and it was prescribed for the Muslims. Though you hate it, there may be something you hate, but it is good for you. Maybe something you love, but it is bad for you. Allah knows and you know not. Meaning the mind and the hawa, the desires, cannot be used as a basis for good and evil. Okay? Whoever takes the ra'i from the mind will have a seat in hellfire. Meaning you just deciding from your own logic. It is authentic. I think I'm not sure of the collection now, but it is authentic. It is narrated by Ibn Abbas. Yeah, it is accepted. So the issue here is that people basically what they are doing is, unfortunately, they are trying to say that there are certain things which are just good and evil by themselves. Well, I'll give you an example. Many people who take the mind or their inclination as the standard for good and bad will end up questioning Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and can end up in a very dangerous grounds. Very dangerous. For example, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam married 9 wives. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam married Aisha when she was young. In the early days of Islam, slavery was allowed. Umar radiallahu anhu had slaves. Okay? These are things which are controversial if you use the mind as the basis and the inclination as the basis. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam fought in war and killed. In war. He allowed when the Jews of Banu Qurayza, this is well known in the seerah, when they were traitors to him, he ordered for them to be killed, all of them. The men and the women and children to be taken as slaves. So now I'm just giving you deliberately controversial issues just to show you the danger, because if you use the mind and if you use your own inclination, see, every person has been brought up in a different community according to different standards. If you were brought up in a Buddhist community, you will have very Buddhist inclinations towards zuhud and the Buddhist ethics. If you were brought up in capitalist society, maybe you will be, your inclination is just to seek money, and you don't have those type of ethics, isn't it? So how can it be that the society and the community, whatever they are, is determining your good and bad? It cannot be. It is the Sharia of Allah that determines the good and the evil. That's why the mujtahideen, and this is a principle just to relate it to Usul ul-Fiqh. It is a principle in Usul that when you look at the evidence, you remove all emotion. You remove all preconceived notions of good and evil. You look at the daleel, you look at human beings as a human being. And you look at the daleel and what it indicates, regardless of public opinion, regardless of majority and minority and whatever, it doesn't matter. You're simply looking at the daleel and what does it indicate. Okay, and that's why the mujtahideen, the scholars of the past, the great A'immah, they were very brave in ijtihad. They contradicted the majority at their time. Abu Hanifa, he said that if a Muslim kills a kafir, he should be killed. Whereas the majority of the scholars said no, he should pay blood money. Abu Hanifa did not care about the majority. He said this is the correct view and it is the strongest view. Imam Malik, he said, even though everyone rejects that you can pray with your hands by your side. Okay? You see the issue? Because for them, they were just seeking the evidence. They did not care about anything else. Shafi'i says music is allowed. Even though many other scholars, they don't like that. Okay? So what is the issue here? That they just look at the hukam based upon daleel. That's it. This is a very important, fiqh is unemotional. Jurisprudence is non-emotional. We simply search for the evidence and the rule.
Yeah, but Hanafi Rahmatullah, Shafi Rahmatullah, and all the Imams, after them came, Tabi, after them
Yes.
came Imam Bukhari, okay? So he collected the hadith and more collection of hadith when
Yes.
coming to the fast.
Yes.
Yeah, so the fiqh and the ijtihad done by the scholars,
Yes.
yeah, at that time, just to analyze, okay, I'm not giving opinions. So over there, the hadith was less when compared to the hadith which was collected by Bukhari.
I will not answer the question at this point, because we need to go into ilm al-hadith. That's a long topic. Okay? So we will answer it later on, but it is a diversion from the discussion, because we are just talking about the fundamentals. If we go into, like for example, Shafi'i had his own collection of hadith. Don't assume that they didn't have hadith. They had his own. Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani had his own musnad, had his own collection of hadith. Ahmad ibn Hanbal had his own musnad. It was not that they didn't have hadith. Okay? Yeah, no, it was about the classification and the numbering and all of that, and then that's why the scholars later on, they may, from the Shafi'i school, may have, that's why they said, if you find a daleel that contradicts what I have said, follow the daleel. Okay? Meaning that it's possible, yes, that they may not have known of an evidence. That's why we follow, that's why people feel more comfortable following the madhab rather than just the imam. Because the scholars who follow the usul of Shafi'i were later, after Bukhari, until for 1,000 years. Okay? So they had those other hadith, but according to the usul, according to the principles which Shafi'i had extracted and had codified, they were using the same principles, but then applying and looking. That's why they differed. Even the scholars of the Shafi'i school differ with Shafi'i, and of Abu Hanifa differ with Abu Hanifa in some matters. Yeah, not in all matters. Khair? Yes? You need to leave. Oh, okay, Fred, you can go to something, you can leave. No problem. We are recording the session anyway, so. Wa alaikum salam. Okay, any other question? Yes.
is it necessary to have a wudu touching the Quran? Okay. So after Abu Bakr Siddiq radhiyallahu anhu, they made a plan of collecting as a book. Yeah. So
Yes.
Quran in the sense ayah. Yeah. Because later on, I mean the book accomplishment got completed at the end of Uthman.
Yes. No, at the time of Abu Bakr it was complete. Uthman just copied it. Yes. Yes.
So having said that, for example, if I go on a road like in the night times, I get afraid and I want to read the Quranic ayah like Ayatul Kursi. So
Yes.
is it necessary at that time?
See again, so this is a matter of fiqh. Yani the scholars discuss that when we talk about touching the Quran, it means touching the Arabic Quran, which is the whole Quran, not an ayah of Quran. And they look at other evidences. That's why in extracting law, you don't look at one dalil, you look at all the relevant dalil. Rasulullah used to send letters to the Persian Empire, to the Roman Empire, with ayat of Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is an ayah of Quran. Okay? So he would start with that, and they would tear the letters and throw it on the floor and everything. And he still used to send the letters. Okay? So this is a dalil that touching an ayah of Quran, like on a leaflet, you don't need wudu. Okay? But touching the Quran, and the scholars now debate, even within days, it's a deep discussion, within ikhtilaf, within the area of difference. Some scholars say touching the original Quran you need wudu. The Mus'haf compiled by Rasulullah and other copies you don't need. Others say touching the Quran alone, only the Arabic. So if you have Quran with translation, it's not Quran. It's Quran with explanation, so not Quran. It must be the Arabic. So here there is ikhtilaf. So we follow the opinion we believe is strongest. The opinion I follow is that it must be the Arabic Quran. To touch it you need wudu. Okay? Other scholars have different views. Okay. Okay. Any other question? Okay, shall we carry on? Let us carry on. I think we can cover at least some of the Hukum Shari'i section, which is important. So we continue now talking about the Hukum Shari'i, i.e. the Sharia rules. The text of the Quran and Sunnah address many topics such as stories of the previous Anbiya, the previous nations, Yawm al-Qiyamah and other things. However, the text which specifically addresses our actions of what to do or what not to do is referred to as the Hukum Shari'i. The term Hukum Shari'i in Arabic means the address of the legislator related to our actions. Okay? Islam addresses all our actions, whether they are permitted or not. Accordingly, we must be guided by the Hukum Shari'i. So here, we are defining that when we talk about the Ayatul Ahkam, in the Quran, there are many ayat to do with Aqidah, many ayat to do with Yawm al-Qiyamah, to do with Ilm al-Ghayb, to do with Qasasul Anbiya, the stories of the previous prophets. Okay? These are not ayat of ahkam. They may be ayat to believe in or to take lessons from, but they are not ayat to do with ahkam, to do with rules. So the ayat of ahkam, when we look at fiqh, okay, the ayat of ahkam are few. Okay, so the scholars say, they debate on the number, some say 300 ayat, okay, to do with fiqh or to do with jurisprudence, out of all the other ayat. And the hadith, of course, is vast. The hadith has come to explain the Quran. So the hadith are many, and the books of hadith are full to do with ahkam, to do with Sharia rules. So here we're just appreciating that the Hukum Shari'i, the Sharia rules, the definition is the khitab, the address of the legislator, the Shari, Allah, related to the actions of man, okay, related to the actions of human beings. Again, this definition generally is accepted. Some scholars, they said, related to the actions of those who are legally responsible. Okay, but that definition is not the strongest definition, because, for example, zakah is obliged upon the one who is even a child. Okay, although it is disputed, but it is a view that the zakah is obliged upon a child. If a child inherits wealth, okay, and the parents have died, the child must pay zakah, the guardian must pay zakah upon the wealth. Now, if you say that Hukum Shari'i is upon the actions of the ones who are legally responsible, then that excludes fiqh for the child. But there is fiqh for the child. You see the issue? So it is a better definition, and it is a more correct definition, that the Hukum Shari is that it is the address of Allah, the legislator, related to the actions of the ibad, the slaves, or of insan, okay, who are the slaves of Allah. So, and here simply we have mentioned some ayat to do with the importance of following the Hukum Shari. Allah said, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Whoever does not rule according to what Allah has sent down or revealed, they are the transgressors, they are the zalimun. So, the rules of Allah are there to be applied, to be followed. Now, there are types of ahkam sharia, there are types of sharia rules. And many Muslims, as we say here, are too quick to conclude that something is either haram or fard after a quick reading of an ayah or hadith. Okay? This is a very common mistake. Okay? People, they read one hadith, they read one ayah, oh, this is obligatory. Okay? This is haram. They are very quick to do that. We have to be careful. Okay? That we have to realize, what does the dalil indicate? Which rule does it indicate? Okay? For example, some people say we must follow the sunnah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in everything. In every matter. Now what do we mean by here the sunnah? Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to ride a camel. Does it mean we need to ride a camel? What is the hukum of riding a camel? That's what we need to look at. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you know, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he used to have his hair in braids, by the way. Contrary to popular opinion, meaning he used to have long hair, you know, he used to have zulfa, and he used to have hair in plaits. It's narrated in authentic hadith, okay, that he used to have plaits, okay, that when he was going in a hijrah, the woman narrated the description of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and it's one of the best descriptions, and the description includes his hair was in plaits. So, does it mean that we have to do that? Okay, so here again, we can't just assume things, and by reading one hadith or reading something, we have to look at what does the dalil indicate. Okay, and what is the extracted rule from all the evidences put together. For example, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said in authentic hadith, I have nothing to do with those who live amongst the mushrikeen. Somebody could read that, there are some Muslims who read that, oh, to live in India is haram. Yeah? There are some of our brothers. Hadith says to live amongst the mushrikeen is haram. Okay? But now, again, when we look at this hadith, we have to look at all the other hadith related to the subject. The Prophet said, do not seek fire from the light of the mushrikeen. At the same time, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam allowed Muslims to live in Makkah under the rule of the mushrikeen. At the same time, when one of the Muslims, he came to him, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said to him, that what you have done is better, or your people are better than mine. My people threw me out, and your people embraced Islam. But it gave a permission. He did not condemn. The action of the messenger must be to condemn anything haram. He would have condemned him. Why were you living amongst them? Okay, so you see the issue. So we can't take a single evidence and just make interpretation. Okay, we have to look at what does the evidence indicate, and what is the rule indicated. Many Muslims, they argue upon things without having the requisite knowledge. So that's the point here. So now, when we look at the types of ahkam sharia, the types of the sharia rule, there are 5 types. The first is the fard or the wajib. These terms are synonymous. Fard and wajib mean the same thing. Some scholars, like Abu Hanifa, made a distinction. He says the fard are the definitive matters, which are obligation, and the wajib are those which are obligation in my opinion. But if somebody differs in that, he would call it wajib, not fard. Fard he would say is the qat'i things. And the wajib would be the things which are obligatory, but in his view, because other scholars differ on the view. For example, growing the beard according to him is wajib. Okay? But for other scholars, that's why he said it's wajib. It's not fard, because fard he categorized as definitive. He knows it's not definite. Other scholars say it's recommended or permitted or whatever. Right? So there are some, but generally it's synonymous. In the language, fard and wajib mean the same thing, so there's no point to make a distinction. And if the request to do the action is decisive, talab jazim, then it is a fard or a wajib. Both have the same meaning. A person who complies with a fard will be rewarded, while the one who disobeys will be punished. So now what are we understanding? We're understanding that talab. Talab means the request. What is the request from the ayah? What is the request from the hadith? Okay? Is it something jazim, meaning it is definite or established that you must do this? Or is it something ghair jazim, meaning it's good to do this? Right? So that is what the scholars debate on. So sometimes that's where difference of opinion emanates. Rasul said, grow the beard, trim the moustache and dye the hair. So scholars debate, is it jazim or ghair jazim? When the Prophet said grow the beard, does he mean you must grow the beard? Or does he mean that it's good to grow the beard? So there is ikhtilaf in this matter. Imam al-Nawawi says it's recommended. Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi says it is permitted. Other people have different views on the beard. Some say it's obligatory. So that difference of opinion can emanate from the language of a text. Okay. But the point is that the jurist, he looks at the point whether it is jazim or not. Okay. So when Rasulullah said there is no rak'ah of salah without Fatiha, that is jazim now in the wording, that there can be no rak'ah of salah without Fatiha. Now it is disputed whether the Fatiha must be by the Imam. That's a different mas'ala. But in the individual salah, no one differs. An individual salah, because the Prophet has made it clearly in the language, there is no rak'ah of salah. So here it is a clear thing that you must have Fatiha in the salah in every rak'ah. Okay, then that everyone accepts. The difference comes when the Imam is reciting. That is something else. Yeah. So the point here is that the fard is when the evidence is indicating a decisive request to do it. And if you don't do it in this case, if you don't do it and it is established that it is fard, then you believe it is fard, then you are sinful. And if you do it, you are rewarded. Right? Examples here, establishing salah, wa aqimus salah, it's decisive. Okay? Paying the zakah, participating in jihad, i.e. jihad as an obligation, as a concept, is something fard, but is fardul kifaya. Being ruled by Islam, okay? So having bayya on the neck, the hadith is decisive. That you must have the bayya on the neck. Whosoever dies without the bayya on the neck dies the death of jahiliyyah. So now, the Prophet is condemning the one who does not have the bayya. That means it is decisive that you must have the bayya. Right? If the Prophet said, oh, it's good to have the bayya, or the one who has the bayya on the neck, he is rewarded, then it would be ghair jazim. Maybe it would be recommended. Like Rasulullah, when we come to mandubat, we will come to see those hadith. Like smiling is sadaqah. Smiling at your brother. It's a good thing. And if you don't smile, it's not haram. It's not committing sin. It's not obligation for you to smile. It's a good thing. You get ajr for that. You get reward for that. So fard is one thing. Haram is the opposite of fard. Haram is the opposite of fard. If you do it, you are sinful. If you don't do it, you are rewarded. Okay? So as we said, if the instruction is connected with a decisive command of refraining from an action, then it is haram or mahzur. If the haram is committed, then the person will be punished. But if the haram action is avoided, the person will be rewarded. For example, riba, Allah has made it clearly, وَحَلَّ اللَّهُ بَيْءَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. It here is just clear cut in the language. Allah has permitted trade, He has forbidden usury. Riba, so even He's used the word forbidden here, haram, forbidden. Okay? So, riba is an example of that. Gambling, He said, in the vices and the evils are the alcohol and the gambling. Okay, so these things are from the ayah of Quran. So these things are haram and nobody disputes. Nationalism, Rasulullah said, leave it, it is rotten. Okay, so again it is forbidden. I'll just give you examples, when the request and the request in the style of the language can be not necessarily in the form of a order, but it may be that the Prophet has condemned something. So the Prophet ﷺ said, the shaitan, he drinks with the left hand. So the scholars say drinking with the left hand is haram. Okay? The shaitan walks with one shoe. So wearing one shoe and walking is haram. As an example. So if the Prophet, comes later on in the Usul, if the Prophet has associated shaitan or evil or something or lack of success or something in a hadith, is an indication of the talab, indication of the hukum, of prohibition. Okay, Rasul said in Sahih Muslim the hadith, whosoever appoints a woman as a ruler will never be successful. It doesn't mean women are bad, it just means it's haram. Okay, that to have a woman as a ruler is not allowed in Islam. The women can be judges, they can be administrators, they can be other things, but ruling, that's a position reserved for men. That's in the wisdom of Allah. It's not something that He has revealed why, but it's just there. Okay? So, these are the rules. When something is condemned in a decisive way, and if the scholar views that it's decisive, then he makes it haram, or he would deduce that it's haram. Right? The mandub, the mustahab, the sunnah and the nafila, when it comes to fiqh, have the same meaning. They are all synonymous terms. When we say something is mustahab, something, the 2 rak'ah after maghrib are sunnah. Okay? Giving gifts is sunnah. Okay? Giving gifts is mustahab. Giving some food to your neighbor after you have cooked is mustahab, or mandub, or nafila. All of these mean the same thing. It means recommended. It means if you do it, you get ajr, you get reward. If you don't do it, there is no sin. It is simply recommended. It's a good thing, you do it, you get ajr. You don't do it, there is no sin, because the text is not indicating sin. Sin is to do with haram. Right? So, generally, here we have many examples: going to visit the sick, giving sadaqah, fasting on Monday and Thursday, okay, all these things, reciting of Quran, additional, apart from the salah. This is what we call the mandub, the recommended deeds which are good, and we see the Muslims and we encourage them to do that, but we don't evaluate them on that. The one who does not do the nafila and the mandubat, we can't say he is a fasiq. We can't say he's a bad Muslim. Some people today have made that a criterion for taqwa. The basics of taqwa, like Uthman and the other scholars in history, like Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, Al-Hassan ibn Ali radiallahu anh, they've defined taqwa is sticking to the haram, away from the haram, and doing the fara'id. This is the basics of taqwa, of piety. So people today, they view taqwa in the wrong way. They will say, how can you be muttaqi? You don't have big beard, you're not wearing imama, and this and that. That's nothing to do with taqwa. Taqwa is to do, Umar radiallahu anh, and the other scholars, when they were very harsh about taqwa, they saw people in the masjid praying all day and night. Who are you? We are the people who rely upon Allah. We are the mutawakkilun. We are the people who rely. He said, no, you are the mutawakkilun. You are the people who eat the money of others and then you say you rely on Allah. Meaning, this is not taqwa to do that. Taqwa is not to be a monk and sit in the mosque all day. Taqwa means in all the affairs of life you stick to the Sharia. Okay? Taqwa is not, as Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, is not praying by the night or fasting by the day, or mixing between these two. Taqwa is sticking to the commands and the prohibitions of Allah. Okay, so that's the basic of a Muslim. The basics is sticking out of the haram and doing the obligation. Now, the mandubat, yes, it's good to do it. The makruh is the opposite of the mandub. The makruh, if you leave it, you are rewarded. If you do it, there is no sin. Okay, so for example, going to the masjid, okay, after eating garlic, Rasulullah disliked that, and he said it is disliked. Okay, so if you don't do it, it is better, you will be rewarded for that. Throwing litter on the road, it is makruh. You throw litter, it's not something you're sinful for, but it's better to avoid. If you avoid, you will be rewarded. Okay, so the makruh again is being indicated in the ghair jazim way, in a way which is not decisively detested. Okay, it is disliked by Allah, i.e. is not prohibited to do it, but if you don't do it, it is better for you. Okay. Other examples here: performing salah between fajr and sunrise. Okay, and we've given other examples. Many things the scholars say fit within the makruh, okay, and not necessarily in the haram. So when they look at the evidence and the evidence indicates somehow that it is a dislike thing, they would say that. But if the evidence is clear that it's to do with hellfire, to do with shaitan, to do with disobeying Allah, to do with waging war against Allah, then all these things come under haram. Makruh is just the dislike matters. And then the final category, which is the mubah, the permissible. The permissible, the mubah, are those actions you do it, there is no sin, there is no reward. Okay, there is no sin, there is no reward. Whether I wear a blue color top or a white color top, or whether I choose to eat chicken or meat today, I'm not going to be rewarded either for that. It is mubah. It is permitted. It is just within the, I am safe, i.e. I'm not doing anything haram. It is permitted. So for example, to ride a camel, or to go on a scooter, or to ride a car, it's mubah. It's not indicated, although the Prophet did it, it is not he did not command it, he did not make it recommended, he did not make it obligatory. Yeah? So, again, this is, we give examples here, marrying up to 4 wives. Allah in the Quran, He has said you can marry 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So He has made it mubah. He is not ordering it, He is not obliging it, He is not making it recommended. He is saying it is permitted, it's a permission. 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Okay. Well, of course there are rules and conditions for that. You have to treat them justly and all those things. But that is the rule. Okay. It is mubah. Allah said in the Quran, for the Ahlul Kitab, their food for you, it is lawful. So I mean it's mubah. If the Jews, they make cut food, kosher meat, it is halal for us. Okay. As an example, this is a permission. It is making something allowed. Okay. So when we talk about Sharia, when we talk about fiqh, we are always talking about these 5 categories. We are always talking about these 5 categories. Is something fard? Is it makruh? Is it mandub? Is it mubah? We are always trying to determine. That's what Islamic law is all about. Okay. Now, generally, just to give you some background on this, generally the schools of thought are unified on these 5 categories. There is one school of thought who adds subcategories, which is the Hanafi school. Okay. The Hanafi school has sunnah mu'akkida, ghair mu'akkida, makruh tahrimi, and non-tahrimi. Okay. They have additional categories. So the Hanafi school, they have a view, okay, khair, it's their opinion, but it is not necessarily the strongest view, but it is their view that they say that certain things Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, although did not oblige them, he never missed. So the 2 rak'ah before Fajr, although he did not oblige, he did not say you are sinful, but he in his entire life did not miss that. So they say it is sunnah with ta'aqeed. It is sunnah with emphasis, so therefore it is sunnah mu'akkidah. You should do it and it is emphasized more to do it. And you should not leave it. And they say if you leave it, then if you leave it now and again, you are not sinful now and again. If you repeatedly leave it, then you are departing from the sunnah of the Prophet, and then you will not get the shifa, you will not get the intercession on the Day of Judgment of the Prophet. So they have a view, of repeatedly leaving it. Similarly, makruh, they say certain makruh is close to haram. Although it's not haram, it's close to haram. So if you repeatedly do it, you can lead to that same point of not getting intercession. So this is a view, of one school of thought. The other schools, all the other schools don't have this view. They just have 5 categories. And in fact, it is the strongest categorization, actually, because, anyway, we can go into it as a separate debate, that if you start subcategorizing something close to haram, but it's not haram, at the end of the day, it is not haram. And to deduce that you will not get intercession from the Prophet, does it mean you are sinful? Again, it is a problematic area. So the other scholars have refuted that. Okay. But khair, the ones who follow that and believe that to be the truth, fair enough. Okay. But it is not the strongest opinion. Khair, finally, just to there are sometimes subcategorization, like within fard. We are just explaining here, there are two types of fard. Fard ain, fard kifaya. Certain fards which are collective duty. If some people fulfill that, the sin is lifted. For example, if somebody comes into the room and says salam to us, okay, it is fard kifaya to reply. So if none of us reply, all of us are sinful. Okay? It's fard kifaya. So if someone must reply, it's a duty of sufficiency. Once somebody has replied, then everyone else to reply becomes a recommended thing, because it's already been done. Right? Similarly, janaza. When somebody dies, to make janaza, I don't have to go, it's not for me to go, it's not fard ain. If the janaza is already being made, but if nobody is making, and I know my neighbor has died, nobody is making janaza, and he is a Muslim, and I know about it, then it is my individual duty until it hatta yakun, fard kifaya, hatta yakun, until it is established. So it becomes a fard of sufficiency until it is fulfilled. If it is not fulfilled, it is fard ain. Like appointing the Khalifa. Appointing the Khalifa, not everyone is electing, not everyone is involved maybe in the process. But it is fard kifaya, and there is a time limit to it. Okay, when we look at the evidence. If nobody does it, there is no Khalifa, it becomes fard upon all the ummah to try and establish the Khalifa. You see the issue? So fardul kifaya is a type of fard. We should appreciate it, okay, that it's different to fard ain. I will pause here, then maybe we will end after this, the time. We will end at 9:30, we started at 7:30. So fair. Yes. Yes. Right. See, the issue of taqwa is to do with, as I said, the basics of taqwa is staying away from haram and doing the obligations. That is the basics of taqwa. Now, you can have different levels of taqwa. It is true, the concept is true. Rasulullah mentioned that some people, they do and they stay away from haram because they fear the punishment. Some people, they do to get the ajr, the reward, and some people to get the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. That is ihsan, that is the better state. Okay, so taqwa has grades, yani. You can say the person who is more muttaqi is the one who does the mandubat, who does the recommended deeds and so on. However, this does not mean if you believe something is mubah, and somebody else believes that something is wajib or something is mandub, but you believe it should be mubah, then for you not to do it is nothing to do with taqwa. So for example, there is ikhtilaf, there is difference of opinion, that the evidences are not definitive in meaning on the issue of wearing niqab. Okay, as an example. So 3 out of the 4 madahib, they say wearing the niqab is not wajib, is not fard. So the madhab of Abu Hanifa and of Shafi'i and of Imam Malik, they don't say it's obligation. Some schools, within the madhab of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, there are 2 views. Some say it is obligatory, some say it is not. Some say it is recommended. Then the Zahiri school, the literalist school, they say some of them it is obligatory, some of them like Albani says it is not. So there is difference of opinion within the scholars upon this matter. So for example, if you believe it is simply mubah, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said in an authentic hadith, everything should be covered except this and this. To Asma bint Abu Bakr, to the daughter of Abu Bakr. So now, if you believe based upon dalil that it is simply permitted to cover the face or not cover the face. Yes, for the wives of the Prophet there was obligation, that is a different thing. There are different rules. For example, the wives of the Prophet, after the Prophet died, they could not remarry. There are rules which are known as khas, specific for them. Okay, they are Ummul Mu'mineen, they are the mothers of the believers, we could not marry them. So, when we talk about taqwa, we should be careful that we should not talk about levels of taqwa according to our opinion of something, because maybe there's scholars and people who follow valid opinions which are different. For example, if I believe the beard is recommended and somebody does not have the beard, I cannot see myself as more muttaqi than him. First of all, you cannot judge the basis of taqwa upon beard or not beard. Because if somebody believes it's not obligatory, then he is muttaqi. If he does not have a beard. Okay, maybe if he believes it is recommended, then you can say it's a higher grade of taqwa for him to do the recommended deed. Fair enough. You see the point? So we should be very careful. Unfortunately, Muslims today have become very shallow in judging taqwa. They judge taqwa from external things. So there may be a sister wearing niqab and everything and gloves, but at the same time she takes riba. She is not muttaqi. And the sister who is just covering the khimar and the jilbab and so on, and she stays away from riba, she is muttaqi because she is staying away from haram. Similarly, there may be a person in the masjid who is in the front row, who prays tahajjud, who fasts Mondays and Thursdays, who has the beard and everything, but what does he do? He cheats in his business. Rasulullah says, whoever cheats us is not one of us. He commits haram. He mixes with women in a social way who are not mahram. So he is not muttaqi. Okay, you see the issue. Unfortunately, we have developed a misconception of taqwa. So I'll give you, for example, two pictures. Say a brother rings the doorbell and comes now in the door. One of them has a big beard, he's wearing the jalabiya, he's wearing the, what we call the dishdasha, he's the zulfa, he's there, he has a copy of the Quran in his hand and the tasbih. And there's another one who is clean shaven with a stylish haircut, who is holding a keys to his Mercedes Benz and who's holding the Times of India. Automatically we will judge one as muttaqi and one as not, and that is false. Okay? The one who is holding the Times of India and the Mercedes Benz, maybe all of his earning is halal, like Uthman radiallahu anh, who is a millionaire. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, who is a millionaire. They used to have the best things. In one wedding, Uthman ordered for 100 sheep to be slaughtered. Okay? And they were very rich. But you had other Sahaba who maybe were very poor. Okay? And so, but they are both muttaqi. And we can't differentiate in that. So we don't look at external things to decide taqwa. We look at the criterion of Islam. Fair? Any other questions about this issue? The issue of talab is important. The request, whether it is jazim or ghair jazim. This is important, this point. So when we want to deduce the rule, we need to look at the request in the hadith or the ayah. Is it something definitive or as a must or less than that? Okay, and that we'll study it later, it has qara'in, indicators to indicate. Okay, so it could be the language itself is that. It could be that the Prophet has mentioned the reward of something. Okay, the reward Rasulullah said of praying salah in jama'ah is so many times more than individual. So now he's emphasizing, but he's not forbidding praying individually. You see the issue, at the same time, he is saying the reward of praying salah in jama'ah. So that he is saying that praying alone is allowed. Isn't it? Some people, they misinterpret. They think praying salah in jama'ah is wajib, fard ain. Because they take another hadith, and in fact, you have to look at all the texts, in fact. So, the issue is this, that we need to look at the request in the hadith. Okay, what does it mean? The request could even be mubah. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, when I order you anything related to your own affairs, you know better. Why? This hadith was mentioned when the Ansar, the people of Medina, the Aus and the Khazraj, what were they doing? They were cross-pollinating the date palms. In order to increase the yield of dates, you need to get the seeds and pollinate. They made it cross-pollinate artificially. Okay, they were hitting the sticks, hitting the branches of the trees together to cross-pollinate. Rasulullah passed by that, he looked at it, he said, why are you doing this? He did not understand the science behind what they are doing. He was not a farmer in the dates. He did not understand that. Well, why are you doing? So, don't do this. That year, the yield of dates went down. the date yield became low. They came to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they said, our yield has gone down, you told us not to do that. He said, I did not mean that. If I order you anything in your affairs, I am a man like you, you know better. Meaning, when it comes to scientific issues, when it comes to issues of dunya, i.e. science, in the worldly, he mentioned in the affairs of the dunya, this doesn't mean it means in technological matters. I am a human being like you, you could understand the technology better than me. And therefore, the order here, it may be seen as the Prophet is forbidding, but it was mubah. So if the Prophet ﷺ, for example, when it comes to technological things, he used to ask other people and he used to take their opinion better than himself. He asked Habab ibn Mundir in the Battle of Badr, because it's strategic issue. Habab is more of an expert in the strategy of war. Habab said, let us take the wells. The Prophet's opinion was something else, but the Prophet said, okay, yes, that's better. Let's take that. Yeah, so Salman Farsi, yes. So sometimes it is mubah even. So we have to look at the evidence. What is the Prophet actually saying? Okay, is the Prophet or what is the ayah saying? The ayah may be just permitting something. وَحَلَّ bay'ah. Trade is halal. Doesn't mean it's obligatory. Doesn't mean it's even recommended. It's just halal. Okay, so we have to look at the dalil and then look at the hukum extracted from the evidence. Fair. Questions we have?
There's a hadith that,
yes.
I think quote it exactly.
Yes.
That halal and haram were distinct.
Yes.
So the issue of
Shubha.
yeah.
Yeah, this is a very, very good question. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith, "Innal halalu bayyin wal haramu bayyin." The halal is clear and the haram is clear. Now, let us read the hadith and the wording of the hadith very carefully. The hadith is long actually. It says the halal is clear, the haram is clear. In between them, it is mutashabihat. There are unclear matters. There are grey areas. Okay? So the Prophet said the halal is clear, the haram is clear. In between them, there is mutashabihat, unclear matters. Now let us continue. People make a misinterpretation here. So they say, oh, we just stick to the clear matters. Certain things, they are not clear, let's just leave them. No. The Prophet ﷺ continued. Some people are aware of them. Some people are aware of them. Meaning for those people, the ulama, the fuqaha, the people of knowledge, it is bayyin. It is not mutashabih. It is not vague. Right? Some people are aware of them. Save your deen and save your honor. For whoever has fallen into them has committed haram. And every king has a hima, a protected area. And the hima of Allah are his prohibitions. So, what do we understand? Okay. What we understand from the hadith is actually that if halal is clear to you, then do it. If something is not clear to you, you don't have the knowledge whether it's halal and haram, then it's haram if you do it. If you fall into it, you have committed haram. If you don't know whether it's allowed to, have a business transaction with a woman or not, you don't know. It is halal, but if you don't know, and you just do it anyway, you are falling into the shubha, something you do not know, it's not clear for you. It is clear for the person of knowledge, but it is not clear for you. It is shubha, therefore you have committed a haram. It actually supports the point that every action needs a dalil and a hukum. Okay, the hadith also has another meaning, because the hadith, the ulama go deep. They say, again in the language, it says, save your honor. Save your deen, save your honor. So now they go into a whole different discussion about saving your honor from shubha. And they use other dalil. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam at night, he was walking with his wife, and two of the Ansar, they saw him and they started to walk very quickly. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam stopped them. He said, this is my wife. Okay, so they don't have doubt on him. And They said, Ya Rasulullah, how can you think that we will think bad of you? He said, Shaitan runs in man like the blood in the veins. Meaning that it is a duty, if you think your honor is going to be cast in doubt, they think you're doing something haram, then you must clarify. Okay? So for example, if I am doing something which seems to be haram. So I remember I was walking with one of my nieces, my brother's daughter. She is not Islamic. She does not practice Islam fully. So I was walking with her in the city center, and she does not wear khimar. And she is young. She is 9 days younger than me. Okay? I was walking and I was meeting Muslim brothers. Now obviously I am walking with her. They could think that I am doing something wrong. Shubha, you are with some girl. What's going on? So everyone out there said, this is my niece. She has come from Africa. This, that, you know. So it clarifies the shubha. Okay? So this is another thing extracted from the hadith. But the main issue, what we are worried about, is that it reinforces the concept. It's a beautiful